My name is James, and I used to work at a small Pizza Hut in Milwaukee, a quiet neighborhood most of the time. I'd taken the job to save money for college. It was simple work, taking orders, cleaning, and helping customers. Most days were the same, but there was something off about that night. I didn't know it yet, but it would be the most terrifying experience of my life. It started as a regular shift. My manager, Mr. Taylor, was locking up early because business was slow, leaving just me and another employee, Kevin. Kevin was new, quiet, and rarely spoke unless necessary. I didn't know much about him except that he always kept to himself. Something about him gave me a weird feeling, but I figured he was just shy. Around 9:30 p.m., Mr. Taylor left, promising to be back in the morning. Kevin and I stayed behind to clean up and finish closing the store. I was sweeping the front while Kevin was in the back cleaning the kitchen. The silence in the store felt heavier than usual. It wasn't the comforting quiet I was used to. It felt wrong. "Hey Kevin, you good back there?" I called out, trying to shake off the weird feeling. He didn't answer right away, but when he did, his voice sounded low and tense. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just finishing up." I shrugged it off and kept sweeping, but as I worked, I started noticing little things. The mop bucket hadn't moved, even though Kevin said he was mopping. The trash bags were still by the back door, untouched. My instincts told me something was wrong, but I didn't want to overthink it. That was until I saw it. A streak of something dark, smeared on the floor near the kitchen door. I moved closer, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't water or grease. It was red. "Kevin?" I called out again, my voice shaking. No reply. Suddenly, I heard the faint creak of the back door opening, followed by hurried footsteps. My stomach twisted into knots. Something was definitely wrong. I moved toward the kitchen cautiously, gripping the broom tightly in my hands. What I saw when I stepped into the kitchen froze me in place. The sink was filled with red water, and there were bloody streaks across the counter. My legs felt like they would give out. Where was Kevin? And what had he been doing back here? Before I could process anything, I heard a whisper behind me. "You shouldn't have come back here, James." I turned around and Kevin was standing there, his face pale, his eyes wide and wild. In his hands was a knife, and his grip on it was tight. "Kevin, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, a twisted smile forming on his face. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was frozen in place. Kevin's twisted smile widened as he stepped closer, gripping the knife like he was ready to strike. My body felt like it was made of stone. I couldn't move, couldn't think. "Kevin, listen," I said, my voice shaky. "Whatever's going on, we can fix it. Just put the knife down." His laughter filled the kitchen, low and broken, like he was barely holding himself together. "Fix it?" he said, tilting his head. "You can't fix what's already broken, James. You wouldn't understand." Suddenly he lunged toward me. My reflexes finally kicked in, and I swung the broom with all my strength, hitting his arm and knocking the knife to the floor. He staggered back, clutching his wrist while I bolted toward the front door. The door wouldn't budge. It was locked. My heart sank as I realized Mr. Taylor had taken the keys with him. I glanced back, and Kevin was already on his feet, his expression now a mix of rage and madness. "You're not going anywhere," he yelled, grabbing a heavy pizza cutter from the counter. I darted into the dining area, flipping tables and chairs behind me to slow him down. My breathing was ragged, and every muscle in my body screamed for me to keep moving. I needed to find a way out, fast. The phone at the counter caught my eye. I sprinted toward it, but as I picked up the receiver, the line was dead. Kevin must have cut the cords earlier. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the entire restaurant into darkness. I froze, my ears straining to hear any sound. The only noise was my own ragged breathing, echoing in the silence. "James," Kevin's voice called out, soft and taunting. "There's no point in hiding. You'll only make this harder on yourself." I crouched behind a booth, clutching a chair leg I'd broken off during my escape. My heart pounded so loudly I was afraid he'd hear it. The sound of footsteps grew louder, closer. Kevin was searching for me, his shoes squeaking on the freshly mopped floor. My mind raced, trying to come up with a plan. I couldn't overpower him, but maybe I could outsmart him. A faint red glow caught my eye, the exit sign above the back door. If I could make it there without him noticing, I might have a chance. I waited until his footsteps moved further away, then crawled on my hands and knees toward the kitchen. I was almost there when something cold and wet touched my hand. I looked down and saw a pool of blood spreading across the floor. My stomach turned, and I had to fight the urge to scream. Whose blood was this? Before I could react, a shadow loomed over me. "Found you," Kevin whispered, his voice sending chills down my spine. I swung the chair leg blindly, hitting him in the chest. He stumbled back, giving me just enough time to scramble to my feet and sprint toward the exit. I threw myself at the door, slamming into it with all my weight. It burst open, and I tumbled into the alley behind the store. But as I looked up, gasping for air, I realized the nightmare was far from over. The alley was dimly lit, the faint glow of a flickering street lamp barely cutting through the thick fog. The cold air bit at my skin as I stumbled over trash bags and broken crates, desperate to put distance between myself and Kevin. But the back door slammed shut behind me, and I heard his footsteps echoing in the alley. He was coming, and he wasn't far. "James!" Kevin shouted, his voice bouncing off the brick walls. "You can't run forever." I scanned the alley, searching for an escape. To my left was a tall chain-link fence too high to climb without help. To my right, the alley stretched into darkness, leading who knows where. I had no choice. I bolted to the right, my sneakers splashing through puddles as I ran. The sound of Kevin's pursuit grew louder. He was fast, too fast. My chest burned, and my legs felt like they could give out at any moment, but I couldn't stop. Not now. I turned a corner and skidded to a halt. A dead end. The walls on either side of me seemed to close in, their jagged edges covered in graffiti that looked like strange symbols under the faint light. My mind raced. There had to be another way out. I spotted an old, rusted dumpster against the wall. If I could climb it, maybe I could pull myself onto the ledge above. Without thinking, I grabbed the edge of the dumpster and hauled myself up, my arms shaking from the effort. As I reached for the ledge, Kevin's voice rang out behind me. "You think you can escape me, James?" He was standing at the entrance to the alley, his silhouette menacing in the dim light. I ignored him and stretched for the ledge, my fingers just barely gripping the edge. But before I could pull myself up, Kevin grabbed my ankle and yanked me down. I fell hard onto the dumpster, the impact knocking the wind out of me. Kevin climbed onto the dumpster, his eyes wild with rage. "This ends here," he snarled, raising the pizza cutter he still held. I kicked out desperately, my foot connecting with his stomach. He stumbled back, teetering on the edge of the dumpster, before falling to the ground with a sickening thud. I didn't wait to see if he was hurt. I jumped down from the dumpster and ran back toward the street, my mind consumed with one thought. I had to find help. But as I emerged from the alley, the street was eerily quiet. The shops were closed, their windows dark. The only sound was the faint hum of a street lamp buzzing overhead. I spotted a payphone near the corner and ran to it, fumbling in my pockets for loose change. My hands shook as I dialed 911, praying someone would answer quickly. 911, what's your emergency? A calm voice answered. "Please help," I gasped. "There's a man trying to kill me. He's..." Before I could finish, the line went dead. I stared at the receiver in disbelief, my heart pounding. The payphone screen flickered, displaying the words, "Asterisk, no connection, asterisk." Behind me, I heard the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps. Kevin was back. I turned around slowly, my breathing heavy. There he was, Kevin, standing under the faint glow of the street lamp. His face was twisted into a menacing grin, and the pizza cutter gleamed in his hand. "You can run, James," he said, his voice almost mocking, "but you can't hide." This is between you and me now." My legs were trembling, but I forced myself to stand tall. "What do you want from me, Kevin?" I yelled, my voice cracking. "Why are you doing this?" He tilted his head, as if considering my question. "You shouldn't have seen what you saw back there. Now, you leave me no choice." My mind flashed back to the image of the red-stained carpet, the lifeless body on the floor, and Kevin standing over it with that same grin. He wasn't just after me, he was covering his tracks. I backed away slowly, trying to think of a plan. The streets were deserted, and I was completely alone with him. Every shop was locked, and there was no one to hear my cries for help. Kevin took a step closer, dragging the pizza cutter along the pavement, the sharp sound making my skin crawl. "Let's make this easy, James. Stop running, and it'll all be over quickly." I wasn't going to give up that easily. I turned and bolted down the street, my heart pounding like a drum. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to keep moving. The sound of his footsteps followed close behind, relentless and unyielding. I darted into another alley, hoping to lose him in the maze of streets. The darkness seemed to close in around me, every shadow a potential threat. My lungs burned, and my legs felt like they would give out at any moment, but I couldn't stop. Suddenly, I tripped over something and fell hard onto the ground. Pain shot through my hands and knees as I scrambled to my feet, looking back to see what had caused me to fall. It was a torn shoe. No, a foot. I froze in horror as I realized I had tripped over a body. It was a young man, his face pale and lifeless. His eyes were wide open, staring blankly at the sky. I stumbled backward, choking back a scream. But before I could process what I had seen, Kevin's voice echoed through the alley. "Found you." I whipped around and saw him standing at the entrance to the alley, his shadow stretching toward me. My hands trembled as I looked for a way out, but there was nowhere to run. The walls were too high and the alley was a dead end. Kevin started walking toward me, his grin growing wider with each step. "You're not as clever as you think, James. This is where it ends." I felt a surge of panic, but also a strange clarity. If I was going to survive, I had to fight back. I grabbed a broken piece of wood from the ground and held it in front of me like a weapon. "Stay back," I shouted, my voice shaking. He laughed, the sound chilling in the silence. "You think that'll stop me?" He lunged at me and I swung the wood with all my strength. It hit his arm, causing him to drop the pizza cutter. He growled in pain, but before I could grab the cutter, he tackled me to the ground. We struggled on the cold, damp pavement, his hands tightening around my throat. I gasped for air, my vision starting to blur. But then, I remembered the piece of wood. My hand fumbled around until I felt it, and with all the strength I had left, I drove it into his side. Kevin screamed and rolled off me, clutching his wound. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed the pizza cutter and ran, leaving him writhing on the ground. As I stumbled out of the alley, I saw flashing red and blue lights in the distance. A wave of relief washed over me as a police car pulled up, 2 officers stepping out with their guns drawn. "Help!" I cried, collapsing to my knees. The officers rushed toward me, one of them shouting into his radio for backup. I pointed toward the alley, my voice barely above a whisper. "He's back there. Kevin." The officers moved cautiously into the alley, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. But when they returned minutes later, they looked confused. "There's no one there," one of them said. My heart sank. How could he have disappeared so quickly? But then I noticed something on the ground near the police car, a small round object that gleamed in the light. It was the pizza cutter. The officers helped me to my feet and led me to the car. My body was shaking uncontrollably, and my mind raced with questions. How could Kevin have vanished? He was injured. There was no way he could have gone far. "Calm down, kid," one of the officers said, his tone steady. "We'll get to the bottom of this. Let's get you to the station." I sat in the back of the police car, staring out the window, unable to shake the feeling that Kevin was still out there, watching. The streets passed in a blur as the car sped toward the station. My hands gripped the edge of the seat, my knuckles white. When we arrived, the officers led me inside. The bright lights and buzzing activity of the station felt surreal after the darkness and terror of the night. A kind-looking officer handed me a cup of water and sat across from me. "Start from the beginning," he said. I told them everything about the body in the Pizza Hut, Kevin's grin, the chase, and the alley. As I spoke, the officers exchanged glances, their faces growing more serious with every detail. When I finished, one of them leaned forward. "James, are you sure about what you saw? The body, Kevin? Everything?" "Yes," I insisted. "I'm not making this up. Check the alley. Check the Pizza Hut." "We already did," another officer said softly. "There's no body in the alley, and no signs of a struggle at the restaurant. The place was locked up clean as a whistle." I froze, my heart sinking. "But I saw it. I saw the blood, the carpet." "James," the officer interrupted gently. "There's something else you should know." He slid a file across the table. "We looked up Kevin. He died 3 years ago. Murder-suicide. He killed his co-worker and then himself in the Pizza Hut you were at tonight." The room seemed to spin around me. "No, that's not possible. I saw him. He was alive." The officer's expression didn't change. "The man you described fits Kevin perfectly, but what you're saying, it just doesn't add up." I shook my head, my mind racing. If Kevin was dead, who or what had been chasing me? Just then, a loud crash echoed through the station. The officers jumped to their feet, hands on their weapons. The sound had come from the evidence room. "Stay here," one of them ordered before they rushed out. I was left alone in the dimly lit room, my heart pounding. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the overhead lights. And then, I heard it. A faint, scraping sound. I turned slowly, my blood running cold. There, just outside the interrogation room window, was Kevin. His face was pale and twisted, his grin wider than ever. He held up the pizza cutter, tapping it against the glass. I screamed, backing away, but when the officers burst back into the room, Kevin was gone. They looked at me, confused and alarmed. "What's wrong? What happened?" "He was here," I shouted. "Kevin, he was right there." The officers exchanged uneasy glances, but before they could respond, a chilling message crackled over the station's radio. "We've got reports of a man with a pizza cutter spotted near Main Street. Witnesses say he's grinning." The officers froze. I felt the blood drain from my face. Kevin was still out there. Even now, as I sit here recounting this story, I can't help but glance over my shoulder. I know he's watching, waiting for the right moment to finish what he started. If you ever find yourself in an empty restaurant late at night and you hear the faint scrape of metal on tile, run. Because Kevin never forgets. My name is Jeff, and I've been working the late shift at Pizza Hut in Los Angeles for a few years now. Most nights are slow, with only a few regular customers coming in. It's always the same crowd, drivers grabbing takeout, college kids looking for cheap food, and the occasional family stopping by for dinner. It was a quiet Wednesday night, and I was alone in the restaurant. The air was thick with the smell of melted cheese and garlic bread, and the hum of the ovens filled the silence. I leaned against the counter, scrolling through my phone, waiting for the next order. That's when the front door creaked open. I looked up and saw a man step inside. He was tall and thin, with hollow cheeks and sunken eyes. His clothes were worn and dirty, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. Something about him felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. "Welcome to Pizza Hut," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "What can I get for you?" The man didn't answer right away. He just stood there staring at me with a blank expression. Finally, he said in a low voice, "I need a table. I'll start with a large pepperoni pizza." I nodded and grabbed a menu, showing him to a corner booth. As he sat down, he placed a small black briefcase on the table. The way he handled it, like it was something precious, caught my attention. "What's in the briefcase?" I asked. trying to make small talk. He looked up at me with a faint smile. Just something I've been saving for a special occasion. Something about his tone sent a shiver down my spine. I brought the man his pizza, and he wasted no time digging in. His movements were quick and jerky, like he hadn't eaten in days. Within minutes, the large pepperoni pizza was gone. "Another one," he said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. I hesitated. "That was the largest pizza we have. Are you sure you want another one?" He nodded, his dark eyes locking onto mine. "I'm hungrier than you can imagine." As I walked back to the kitchen, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The way he devoured that pizza, it wasn't normal. It was almost animalistic. When I returned with his second pizza, I noticed something strange. The man had opened his briefcase, and inside were small glass jars filled with a dark, reddish liquid. He pulled one out and poured it over the pizza like it was hot sauce. The smell hit me immediately, metallic and sour, like rust and vinegar. "What is that?" I asked, my stomach turning. "Special sauce," he said with a grin, taking a big bite. "It makes everything taste better." I backed away slowly, my mind racing. I didn't know what was in those jars, but I was sure it wasn't anything normal. As the night wore on, the man kept ordering more food, each time pouring his strange sauce over it. The restaurant was empty except for him, and I felt trapped. Every time I walked by his table, he would smile at me, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Just as I was about to take his next order, the phone rang. I grabbed it, grateful for the distraction. "Pizza Hut, this is Jeff speaking." "Jeff, this is Detective Harris from the LAPD, a gruff voice said. "I'm calling about a man who might be in your restaurant right now. Tall, thin, carrying a black briefcase." I froze, my eyes darting to the corner booth. "Yeah, he's here. Why? What's going on?" "He's dangerous," Harris said. "We believe he's connected to several murders in the area. Whatever you do, don't confront him. Stay calm, and we'll be there in 10 minutes. I hung up, my hands shaking. Murder? My stomach churned as I looked back at the man. He was still eating, his fingers covered in grease and that strange red liquid. I decided to keep my distance, pretending to clean the counters while watching him out of the corner of my eye. But then he did something that made my blood run cold. He opened his briefcase wider, revealing what looked like blood-stained photographs. I couldn't make out the details, but I saw faces of people who looked terrified. My heart raced as I realized they might be his victims. "Is there a problem, Jeff?" the man said, his voice cutting through the silence. I shook my head quickly. "No, sir, just cleaning up." He stared at me for a moment before closing the briefcase and leaning back in his seat. "You remind me of my daughter," he said suddenly. I blinked. "Your daughter?" "She died a few years ago. Hit and run." His voice was calm, but there was a hint of something dark underneath. "Ever since then, I've been looking for replacements." Before I could respond, the man stood up and walked toward me. My instinct was to back away, but I forced myself to stay still. "I want to show you something," he said, setting the briefcase on the counter. "Don't be afraid." He opened it, and I saw the jars up close. They weren't filled with sauce. They were filled with blood. My stomach turned as he pulled out one jar and unscrewed the lid. "Drink it," he said, pushing it toward me. I shook my head, my voice trembling. "Number, I can't." His calm demeanor shattered. "Drink it!" he shouted, slamming his fist on the counter. I grabbed a pizza cutter from the counter and held it up defensively. "Stay back!" He lunged at me, and I swung the cutter, slicing his arm. He screamed in pain but didn't stop. Just as he grabbed me, the door burst open and Detective Harris and two officers stormed in. "Drop the weapon!" Harris shouted, aiming his gun at the man. The man let go of me and turned to face the police, his face twisted in rage. "You'll never understand," he screamed. "I'm doing this for her." The officers tackled him to the ground and Harris cuffed him. As they dragged him out, he looked at me one last time. She would have loved you, he whispered. The restaurant was a mess and I was shaken to my core. Detective Harris stayed behind to ask me questions, explaining that the man had been on their radar for months. He had been abducting people, using their blood for some twisted ritual he believed would bring his daughter back. Is it over? I asked. Harris nodded. For now, but if you notice anything strange, call us immediately. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I'd ever feel safe again. That night, as I locked up the restaurant, I couldn't shake the feeling that the man's words would haunt me forever. She would have loved you. My name is Otis, and I used to work as a delivery boy for Pizza Hut in a small town in northern Italy. I never thought delivering pizza could be scary until the night everything changed. It all started a few weeks after I got the job. I was 19, a little shy, and still trying to get used to my new role. I mostly worked evenings because that's when we got the most orders. Our Pizza Hut was in the heart of the town, surrounded by cobblestone streets and old stone buildings. My co-workers, especially Marco, loved to joke around. They'd often try to scare me with stories about strange deliveries, but I brushed them off. It's just pizza, not a horror movie, I'd say, laughing. One evening, my manager handed me a thick paper map marked with a red circle. Otis, this is your next delivery, he said, pointing to a spot on the edge of town. It's a big order. Don't mess it up. The address was unfamiliar, but I shrugged it off. Driving out to the countryside sounded peaceful, even if the roads were bumpy. I loaded the pizzas into the old company scooter and set off. It was almost dark and the air was cool. As I left the familiar streets behind, I couldn't shake a strange feeling in my chest. The roads became narrow as I drove further from town. The map said the house was down a dirt path at the edge of the forest. Tall trees lined the road, their branches forming a roof over my head. The setting sun painted everything in orange and red, but it was getting darker fast. After a while, I found the dirt road. It was barely wide enough for the scooter, full of rocks and holes. My headlights flickered, and I muttered, "Not now." But the scooter kept going. At the end of the road, I saw a small house. It looked like no one had lived there in years. The windows were broken and vines crawled up the walls like fingers. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. "Pizza delivery!" I called out. Suddenly the door creaked open. A man appeared, hunched and thin with pale skin and messy hair. "You're late," he said, his voice raspy. I'm sorry. It was hard to find the place," I stammered, handing him the pizzas. He stared at me with wide eyes. "Be careful on your way back," he whispered, then slammed the door. I stood there for a moment, confused. His words felt like a warning. As I drove back, the sun disappeared completely. The forest was pitch dark, and my headlights seemed weaker than before. The scooter began to sputter, and I cursed under my breath. The engine died, and I was stuck in the middle of nowhere. I took out my phone, but there was no signal. The only sound was the wind rustling through the trees. "Great," I muttered, pushing the scooter along the road. After a few minutes, I heard something. It wasn't the wind. It was footsteps. I stopped and looked around, but I couldn't see anything. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. The footsteps got louder, closer. My heart raced as I pushed the scooter faster. Then I saw it. A figure standing in the middle of the road. It was a woman, wearing a tattered dress, her hair covering her face. She didn't move, just stood there staring at me, or at least I thought she was. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked, my voice shaking. She tilted her head slowly, then started walking toward me. Panicking, I left the scooter and ran down the road. My feet pounded against the dirt, and my breaths came in short gasps. When I looked back, the woman was gone. I stopped to catch my breath, but then I heard something. A soft laugh coming from behind me. "Who's there?" I shouted. No answer. But then I saw a faint light up ahead like a lantern. I ran toward it, desperate for help. The light led me to an old motel sitting in the middle of the forest. It looked abandoned, but the front door was open and a dim light flickered inside. I stepped in, calling out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" The lobby was empty except for a desk and a dusty couch. Then, a man stepped out from behind the desk. He was tall and wore a suit that looked too clean for a place like this. "Looking for something?" he asked, smiling. My scooter broke down and I think someone's following me," I said. He nodded, his smile never fading. "You can stay here for the night. It's safe." I hesitated. Something about his smile felt wrong. I decided to stay. The man handed me a key and pointed to a room at the end of the hall. "If you need anything, just call," he said. The room was small, with an old bed and a wooden chair. I locked the door and sat on the bed, trying to calm down. But then I noticed something. There was a cartoon bag on the floor, half hidden under the bed. Curious, I picked it up. Inside were some toys, a diary, and an old photo of a boy and a woman. My stomach dropped. The boy looked like the man at the desk, but younger. The woman was the one I saw on the road. Before I could think, I heard footsteps outside my room. Then, a knock. "Otis," the man called. "I need to show you something." I didn't want to open the door, but he kept knocking. Finally, I stepped out. He led me down the hall, to a door that opened into the basement. "This is where it all happened," he said, smiling. The basement was cold and dark. The man lit a candle, revealing old furniture and a large statue in the corner. "This used to be my family's home," he said, "until they all left me." I backed away, feeling a chill. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. He turned to me, his eyes glowing in the candlelight. "Because she's coming back, and you brought her here." Suddenly the room grew colder, and I heard a woman's voice behind me. "You promised to stay," she said softly. I turned around and saw her, the woman from the road, her face pale and hollow. She reached for me and I screamed, running back up the stairs. I didn't stop running until I was outside. The forest was dark, but I could see the road ahead. I ran until I found my scooter. To my surprise, it started on the first try. As I sped away, I looked back and saw the motel collapsing into the ground, like it was being swallowed. The man and the woman stood outside, watching me, their faces blank. When I got back to town, I quit my job at Pizza Hut. No one believed my story, but I didn't care. I'm just glad I escaped. But sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I hear her voice calling my name. Hi, I'm Leo, and I work at Old Pine Pizza Hut. I've been delivering pizzas there for a few months now. It's just a small, quiet place on the edge of town, away from the bustling city center. The building is old, maybe older than I am, but it's cozy in a weird sort of way. Some nights it's dead quiet, and other nights it's a bit off. But tonight something feels different. The night shift started like any other. The clock on the wall ticked on, and the familiar buzz of the phone sounded every few minutes, ringing in the orders. My manager, Carl, was in the back room sorting out deliveries, and I was stuck working the counter. It was just another slow evening, until the last order came in. It wasn't the order that surprised me, but the address. It was an unfamiliar place. There was no street named on the map, only a set of strange directions. Turn left at the old church, go past the abandoned house, and look for the red light at the end of the road. I stared at the paper with the address written in smudged handwriting. Something told me I wasn't going to like this one. I grabbed the pizza and hopped on my scooter, setting off into the night. The town was quiet, with no street lights and barely a soul in sight. The usual roads felt unfamiliar as I followed the directions. After passing the old church with its broken windows, I found myself at the entrance of an overgrown driveway. The house at the end looked more like a ruin than a home. The windows were boarded up, the paint peeling off the door, and weeds grew in every corner. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me, even though there was no sign of life. The red light, if you could even call it that, flickered faintly on the porch. It was a strange, dim glow that didn't seem to come from any light source. As I approached the house, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. The air felt heavy, thick with something I couldn't quite explain. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. The door creaked open by itself. With my heart pounding in my chest, I stepped inside. The house was dark, save for the flickering red light coming from somewhere deep inside. The place smelled old, musty, like it hadn't been touched in years. The floorboards groaned under my feet as I made my way through the hallway. A voice, soft and distant, echoed from upstairs. "You're here," it whispered. I froze. Was that the customer? I looked around, but there was no one in sight. I walked toward the staircase, the creaking of the steps sounding louder in the silence. As I reached the top, the voice came again. "Don't go any further." But something pushed me. I had to know what was up there. As I reached the final step, I saw it. A figure standing in the hallway, their back turned to me. I called out, "I've got your pizza." The figure turned around slowly, revealing a pale, gaunt face with hollow eyes that seemed to stare right through me. Their mouth opened, but no sound came out. I dropped the pizza and ran. I rushed back downstairs only to find the front door had closed behind me. I tugged at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic started creeping up on me. I glanced around, searching for another way out. The house felt different now, almost alive. The walls seemed to move, and the floors seemed to shift beneath my feet. The red light flickered more violently, casting strange shadows on the walls. I looked toward the back of the house and saw a door that hadn't been there before, a rusty iron door that led into what looked like a basement. Something told me I shouldn't go down there, but at the same time I knew it was the only way to escape. I took a deep breath and pushed open the basement door. The stairs creaked as I descended into the darkness. At the bottom of the stairs, I found a large, dimly lit room. The air was cold, and the walls were lined with old, dusty shelves filled with strange objects, books, boxes, and even old furniture covered in sheets. At the far corner of the room, there was an old wooden chest, half hidden by shadows. I felt drawn to it, my feet moving of their own accord. As I opened the chest, I found old photographs, faded pictures of families and children, some of whom looked very familiar. Among the photos was a picture of the house itself, but it was much newer, standing proud and bright. Something caught my eye in the corner, a figure standing behind one of the people in the picture. It was the same person I had seen upstairs, the one with the hollow eyes. I felt a chill run down my spine. As I stared at the picture, the house seemed to grow colder and I could hear the whispers again, closer now, surrounding me. The voice came from every direction. "You shouldn't have come," it whispered. "You shouldn't have found us." I turned around to find the figure standing right behind me, closer now, its hollow eyes staring directly at me. The room seemed to pulse, as if the house itself was alive, feeding off my fear. Then, the figure spoke, its voice rasping. "We were once like you. We were lost, just like you." The room began to spin, and the walls seemed to close in on me. The figure reached out, its cold hand touching my shoulder. The moment it did, I felt myself slipping into darkness. I woke up outside the house, the morning sun shining down on me. I was lying in the overgrown grass, the pizza box still in my hand, though it had somehow remained perfectly intact. The house was gone, replaced by nothing but empty land. I stood up, my heart still racing, and looked around. There was no sign of the figure, no sign of the strange house. It was as if it had never been there at all. But I knew what I saw. I knew that the house had been real, and whatever I encountered there was still out there, waiting for the next person to make the same mistake I did. I never returned to that part of town, and I never went on another late-night delivery again. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear the whispers calling my name. and I know that some doors are meant to stay closed forever. My name is Jake, and I never believed in things like ghosts or curses. But that all changed one night after I started working as a night shift delivery driver at a pizza place in the small town of Ashbrook. It was supposed to be just a regular job to help pay the bills, but little did I know, it would drag me into something much darker than I could ever imagine. It all began a few weeks ago, right after my family died in a car accident. It was raining heavily that night, and I remember how everything seemed so blurry as I looked at the wreckage of the car. My parents, my younger sister, all gone in an instant. I was the only one who survived, and ever since then I've felt lost, alone. That was when I started working the night shift at the pizza place. I thought it would keep me busy, keep my mind off things. But the first night I worked, something happened that changed everything. It was a cold, quiet night when I got the call for a delivery. The address was strange. It wasn't on the map. "Just head down Midnight Road," the customer said. "You'll know when you get there." The voice sounded odd, almost like they were whispering. I didn't think much of it at first. It was just another weird address. I got into my old car, the one I'd bought with the last of the insurance money after the accident. It was my only way to get around. As I drove, the night grew darker, and the road seemed to stretch endlessly. The streetlights flickered as I drove past houses that looked abandoned, their windows boarded up. The more I drove, the more uneasy I felt. Midnight Road was no ordinary street. It seemed like no one had lived there in years. The air felt thick, and the trees loomed overhead, casting long shadows that made the road feel narrow, even though it wasn't. When I finally reached the address, the house looked like it had been forgotten by time. Dusty windows, the roof caving in. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. Just as I was about to leave, I heard a voice from inside. "Come in." I hesitated, my heart racing. I shouldn't have gone in, but something pulled me toward the door. As I stepped inside, the temperature dropped. It was like walking into a freezer. The house was dark, and the only sound I could hear was my own breathing, heavy and shaky. The air smelled like rot, like something had been left to decay for years. I called out, "Hello? I have your pizza." No response. I moved cautiously into the hallway, the floor creaking under my feet. As I walked further, I saw a flickering light coming from the living room. There, sitting in the corner, was a figure, a woman, her face hidden in shadow. "Are you the one who called?" I asked, trying to sound calm, though my voice was trembling. She didn't answer, just stared at me with eyes that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. "Are you okay?" I asked again, but she remained silent. Suddenly, she stood up, and the moment she moved, I felt a cold breeze wash over me. My skin crawled as I looked around and saw that the door I had entered through was gone, vanished into thin air. Panic surged through me as I turned to leave, only to find the door was no longer there. The house felt like it was shifting, the walls closing in. My breathing became shallow as I rushed through the rooms, trying every door and window, but they wouldn't open. The woman moved closer, her steps slow, deliberate. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. I could feel the weight of her words as if they were a curse hanging in the air. My mind raced. Was she the one who had called for the pizza? Who was she? And why couldn't I leave? Suddenly, everything went dark. My world tilted and I collapsed onto the floor. When I woke up, I was lying in the same spot on the cold wooden floor, but the house was different. It was no longer old and decayed. It looked as if it had been recently lived in, with furniture and lights on. I stood up and walked into the kitchen where I found an old newspaper on the counter. The headline read, "Family dies in car accident on Midnight Road." My heart skipped a beat as I saw a picture of my family, smiling, happy, and alive. But then I saw something strange. The name of the street was crossed out, replaced with the words Death Road. Suddenly, the woman appeared in the doorway. Her eyes glowed, and her face twisted into a sadistic grin. "You can't escape," she said. "You're one of us now." I ran again, but this time the house seemed to close in on me. The walls shifted, the doors vanished. Every turn I took led me deeper into the house, and I realized this wasn't just a house. It was a trap. It was a place where the lost souls of Midnight Road were trapped forever. After what felt like hours of running, I finally managed to break through a wall into the backyard. The moonlight was bright, and I could see the street beyond. I ran toward my car, but something stopped me. The police had arrived. I saw their flashing lights in the distance, but they weren't there to help me. They were there because I had gone missing. As the officers approached, I tried to explain what happened, but my words felt hollow. They didn't believe me. They saw only an abandoned house and a man who seemed too shaken to make sense. "It's just a haunted house," one of the officers said, brushing me off as if it were nothing. But I knew the truth. They left without finding anything, and I was left alone again. Days passed and the police stopped searching. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming for me. The house on Midnight Road, the woman. Everything was a nightmare that kept haunting me. I tried to move on, but I couldn't forget. Then, one night, I received a call. It was the same number from the first delivery. "We know you're still here," the voice said. It wasn't a voice anymore. It was a presence. I grabbed my car keys and drove straight to Midnight Road, determined to end whatever curse had followed me. I wasn't going to run anymore. When I arrived at the house, it was gone. But I knew where it had gone. It was waiting for me, and I was ready. I wasn't going to be the next victim. I would confront whatever this was. But as I stepped into the house for the final time, everything went black, and I was never seen again.